Hello and welcome to week number 4 of Engineering Mastery Academy's training on 5S. For the first 3 weeks, I went over the first 3S's. Sort, set in order, and shine. Today I'm going to be talking about standardize. Standardize has lots of different meanings, lots of different ways different companies apply it. Standardize is basically making sure that things are done the same way on a repetitive basis. If you look at the literature on standardize at different sites, you'll see a lot of overlap between standardize and sustain. You can think of a big piece of standardize as standardizing how you sustain. Sustain is the last S, and I'll be going over that next week. Speaking of which, today is going to be, I hope, the last day of just an individual training in this group. Starting next week, I've scheduled events which will be more public and will also be live. I'm unable to, for some reason I was unable to set it for 9 a.m. as requested by some members of this group. 10 a.m. for whatever reason, I still can't figure it out. It was the earliest that Facebook would let me do. So it's going to be scheduled from 10 a.m. to 10:15 every Friday. Wait, getting back to standardize. So you want to standardize, as I said, you want to standardize your sustaining activities, and you want to standardize how you perform the first 3S's. Sort, set in order, and shine. For example, sort, a lot of people think of it as a single one-time activity. The truth is, in manufacturing, things will creep into manufacturing. A new tool will be brought in maybe by engineering to try out, to use for a new product. Maybe it won't work right and it'll just end up sitting on the floor. So even something with sort, which is primarily, you would hope, a one-time activity, in reality, it needs to be done repeatedly. Same with set in order. Set in order is something more immediate. Set in order and shine, both of those things you want to be checking on a daily basis. You want to standardize how things are done by assigning people to have specific tasks that they have to sustain. You want to use what's called a 5S checklist. There's different names for it, which is basically a checklist that shows what needs to be done daily, what needs to be done weekly, monthly, and quarterly. You might have a different time period for some tools. Maybe you have to do bi-weekly for some things. And the 5S checklist will sit on stations. Every station should have its own checklist saying, these are the things that need to be done weekly, these are the monthly tasks, these are the quarterly tasks. And it just has a little checkbox, or a little, I shouldn't say checkbox, it has a little box for initials to be put into it. You never want to use checkboxes when you can avoid it. I have said many times to many people, I hate checklists with a passion. Checklists are sometimes a necessary evil. You need to get something done quickly, and the best you can do is put in a checklist. My advice for you on a checklist, at a very base level, at least have people initial each item. When people put their initials on something, they're much more likely to read what it actually says. I have found that that's not true, or it doesn't keep sustained over a long period of time. When people get used to seeing the same checklist over and over and initialing, I've dealt with many issues where people just got in the habit of initial down the checklist. What's much better if you have something like a checklist is to have something where data can be entered. Now, I've gone off topic a little bit, but I think this is something important. On a 5S checklist, you could do something like what time of day. You might, instead of having them put initials in, put in the time of day when they've done it. So if they're leaving at 3 o'clock, instead of seeing initials in there, you'll see 3 p.m. Maybe the checklist itself will have a name assigned to it. So it's important to have both a name and some sort of data that can be entered. And if time of day is the best that can be done, which something like this usually is the best that can be done, then have them enter a time of day. So again, you want to standardize the sort, set in order, and shine processes. There's also standardization of appearance. So standardization can be something such as, if you're putting tools onto a tool board, as discussed previously, that you try to get all the tools on the tool board. So, and you want to try to implement toolboards. You might not be able to do it at all stations at the same time, but you want to systematically go through all the stations or the stations of interest and make sure all of them are done similarly. If one's using a tool board, if it makes sense for other ones to use tool boards, it uses tool boards. If one is organized by screwdrivers over here and wrenches over here, then do it the same for the other ones. There can be exceptions. For example, I've talked about previously, actually I don't know that video posted. So on the video that didn't post, I talked previously about pegboards that you can either organize them by type of tool, or if you have certain products that use different tools, maybe two products are built on the same station. One's a large product, uses large tools. The other one's a very small product, uses much smaller screwdrivers, etc. In that case, you might want to separate by product. But if you have an overlap, I'm just going to throw out 30%, 40% overlap in tools, it's best just to organize the tools in a way that looks nice and neat. Usually from largest to smallest, something like that. And then, of course, by the type of tool. So once you have determined that, staying on pegboards for a moment, once you've determined that, you'd want to try to keep that same consistent look across the different stations. It might seem like a minor thing, but appearance has a strong effect on people's attitudes. If they see wildly different things done on different stations, there's no cohesiveness seen in the mind. So you want to try to make things as similar across the board as possible. This can go for stations. This can also go for the workflow, maybe the bench layout. You might want to standardize that, and it can be standardized within a product line or standardized across product lines to keep the entire work area or work floor standardized. One thing I want to throw in that's not usually talked about for 5S standardization is standardizing the appearance of work documentation, whether it's drawings, whether it's method sheets, whether it's spec sheets, or a combination of the three. Maybe some products have more spec sheets and drawings, other products have more method sheets. You want to, if you care about cross-training at least, you want to try to standardize as much as possible how those are presented. Standardization has an effect, like I said, on the mind on multiple levels, on all levels. It could, if you are doing clean room, then typically you have one clean room gowning process, one set of clothing to wear. I have seen where a clean room has an option. You can either get a smock that's white or you can get a smock that's blue, and there's no control over who wears what. Something like that leads people to have a feeling before they even walk into the clean room of lack of consistency. The human brain loves consistency. So try to appreciate that and try to remain consistent across all appearances and how things are done. So standardizing is about standardizing how things are done, both in the 5S process and in the build process, which leads to standardization of appearance and presentation of things like the method sheets and the stations. That's all I have for Standardize. Next week I'll be coming back. Oh, again, next week is going to be the first of a live series. Again, 10 a.m. was the earliest I could do. Hope everything works out on this. It's my first time trying this new option in Facebook. So I hope to see you all next week. 10 a.m. starting next week, 10 a.m. every Friday. Thanks.